let's go over how to export our textures for Unreal. So if I'm in Substance Painter, I'm going to go up to File, Export Textures, and PBR metallic roughness is probably what you're used to, and it's definitely an option to use in Unreal, but we can make it more optimized. So let's select our output template and go down to Unreal Engine Packed, and we'll click on that. And let's just go over what that looks like. So Unreal Engine Packed, you'll notice we have a channel here that has 3 maps inside of one image. So instead of exporting 6 different texture maps, we just have 4, and they are in these channels inside that one image. So settings, and I'm going to export both of my materials. PNG is fine, and let's actually click on this. Because I don't have an emissive on either of these, I'm just going to uncheck that on both. Okay, so jumping into Unreal, when you first open Unreal, you are going to get this pop-up here. We are going to select the Game tab and blank. It should be this by default, but if it's not, go ahead and navigate to that. We can turn off the starter content. It's really up to you, but it just includes some basic stuff if you wanted to like play around with Unreal for like the first time. It does give you some pre-made assets and stuff. And then it's up to you if you want to turn ray tracing on or off. I think I'll turn it on for this demo, and then you can decide where your project lives and give it a name. So I'm naming this one Off the Grid. So now we're in Unreal and we have our project open. I'm going to come down here to the bottom left-hand side and open the content drawer. When I open this, I get a pop-up menu. This is basically the outliner in Maya, and what we want to do is import our assets. So up here, we have this option here that says import. We could also right-click in this area here or drop our files. I'm just going to click this one and navigate to where I saved my asset. Okay, so I selected all of my meshes and textures that I wanted to import, and for the most part, we can leave everything at the default. I want to point out where the combine meshes option is. So in mesh under advanced, you can find combine meshes. So if you didn't combine your meshes, let's say you have things in groups, but you want them to be one mesh, you want to be able to move them around as a whole, you'll want to turn on combine meshes. And then we can scroll down. We can leave transform as it is. Uniform scale should be 1. And if we look down here at material, Unreal Engine will create a material based on the materials you assigned in Maya. So whatever you assign to your mesh in Maya, Unreal will make a material for that and keep the naming convention that you have for it as well. So that's a really nice feature that Unreal does. If you didn't want it to create that material, you just click on that drop down menu. A reason why you might not want to create a material is if you are, re-importing a mesh, but the materials are the same. You don't need to create a new material again. And we'll hit import all. So the first thing that we want to do before bringing assets into our level is to save it. So let's click on File, Save Current Level, and it's going to give you a new pop-up, and we're going to give it a new name. So maybe I'll call this one Base Layout and hit Save. And you'll see now up at the top, my level is renamed as base layout. And if I open my content drawer, there is a new icon here named base layout. And it says that this is a level. So here are all of my assets that I brought in and the materials that Unreal made for it, as well as some of the materials or textures that I had in that folder. We can import more textures later as well. So looking at some basic navigation in Unreal before we go much further. Again, this is sort of like the outliner, but really this is more of a container of all of the things that could exist in your level. So over here is actually like the outliner in which is existing in the scene. So this is sort of uh, more like a library where I can pull things and bring them into my scene. So for example, let's just bring the chair in. So I just clicked and dragged and let go. To move around in Unreal, I can hold Alt and right click to zoom in. If I continue holding Alt and middle mouse button click, I can pan, and still holding Alt and left mouse button click, I can rotate. So everything is using Alt. I also could just drive using my mouse while clicking the left mouse button and moving around. I don't love that as much, but everyone can find their own method. Okay, so my chair is in here and here it is in the outliner, so it exists in the world. You'll notice that I have this little star here and it exists in my content drawer as well. This is telling me that Unreal hasn't saved these assets yet. So we want to save them all, and a box will come up that says save content, and it'll give you all of the items that you created. And so we'll just hit save selected, and now that star is gone. It is saved. Okay, so let's talk assigning materials. So if I double click on my chair, I'm going to get a pop-up menu, and it is a preview of what my chair looks like. So this is a quick way to check your assets. Navigation is the same as the level. And so we can see that I have my material slot. It's got one material assigned to it, and that's my M chairs. I label all of my materials with a lowercase m and then a description of what the item is. So I have a bunch of asset options here in the details panel. For the most part, we can leave all of that at the default. So let's double click on our material M chairs or whatever material you have selected. You're going to get this node graph editor. And by default, you're going to have a parameter assigned to the base color. And we could just delete that. Could just delete that by deleting it. But we want to bring in our materials. So we can open our content drawer here and begin bringing in those textures. So I'm just going to bring in the 3 maps that I have. I have my base color, my normals, and my multi-channel texture. So I'm just going to click on this RGB node and click and drag and drop it into the base color slot. And let's go back to chair and we'll see nothing happen because we need to apply and save. So we'll talk about connecting these in a second, but just to show you, we'll hit apply, and if we go back, it should update. So we'll click back on the chair tab. When we're selected on this texture sample, which is our base color map, you'll see on the left-hand side that there is a details panel. This is all of the information of that texture map. So we can see that we're on color. If we go back to our normal channel, Unreal does its best to recognize these texture maps. So it did automatically change this one to normal for me. And we can click and drag that one into normal. So the bigger one is the multi-channel one that has my roughness, ambient occlusion, and metallic. So the way to move around in your material graph is to right click and you can move your map around. You can just click on any of these nodes and move them around and organize them that way. So before connecting our multi-channel texture, we need to change some options. In our texture sample, we are going to change the sampler type from color to linear color, and you'll get an error here. We can just double click on our texture and it'll pull up another tab, and we just need to uncheck sRGB, and that way it splits up our texture. Back to the material tab, you can see we no longer have that error. So let's connect our channels. So the R channel goes into the ambient occlusion, the G channel goes into roughness, and the B channel goes into metallic. We can hit apply and look at our model. Okay, so we need to save this. We'll hit save, as well as our chair. So now our chair in the scene has materials on it. Let me open my content drawer again, and let's make this bigger. We need to organize this because it will get very chaotic. So a pretty standard way of organizing your folders is to create more folders. So if I just right click in this space, there is an option here that says new folder, and we'll click on that. I'm going to name this one meshes, and we'll make another folder for materials and another one for textures. So I can put these folders within folders too, so like let's say I want a folder for props and I want to keep all of that inside of here. We can select all of our meshes and drag that into meshes. I'm going to click move here, and we'll do the same thing with our materials. I'm just going to click and move those there. And the textures, move them into the textures folder. I missed the table. So I could then, in theory, move all of these into the prop folder, but you can just have this one main folder. I can move them all this way. If I wanted to move them out, select those folders and drag them back into the content, and they'll reappear here again. So I'm going to delete. So I have my meshes. All of my meshes are here, my materials, and my textures. So I need to import more textures. You'll notice that your substance texture files, the naming convention does come in. So pay attention to how you are naming your files. And you'll notice here in my meshes, I did try to name all of these with an _A in case I decide to make a variation of this. I can just name it fridge _B. Let's say I forgot to do it on one of them. We can rename in Unreal. I can just click on that item and right click and choose rename. But again, the reason why I had you export all of your assets as separate assets is so that you can just click and drag multiple copies in, and using the details tab over here, change your location, rotation, etc. So let's actually just send all of these to the origin and see where that takes us. So I'm just clicking on them and clicking on that little arrow and sending them all to 0, 0, 0. And if I hit F on the keyboard while I'm selected on an item, it will focus to that item. And the same keys to rotate and move as any other program, W, E, R. And let's open the content drawer. I can just click and drag my table in. So you can see it tries to snap to the bottom of the world, and it will, even if it notices an object, maybe snap to that. So this is why I said pivots matter, right? So I have my table and my chairs, and we can just come in here and place things. Up here at the top, I have a bunch of options. So this is our snapping to the grid. If I uncheck that, it's a more smooth. We can even, up this. I want it to move every 100. So this is how, if you were to be working modularly, snap to those grid points. Same thing for rotation and scale. So these are also quick icons in case for some reason WER isn't working for you. So if you are just clicking around in your scene, you'll see that you can select these tiles. So I can click on my environment, and we really could just delete them. We will be landscaping later. Yeah, so I have my items in here so I can start arranging things. So I can also organize my objects in my outliner. We could put these inside of folders as well. You can create a new folder by clicking on the little folder icon. And you'll see that Unreal does name each actor in here 2, 3, 4. But this will help you keep your outliner more organized. You can see the landscaping one has a bunch of options here, so we'll keep that closed.